Thank you. Thank you both for being here. In that March speech, Vladimir Putin, he unveiled these new weapons. He referred to them over a dozen times as strategic, at least in the Kremlin's English translation. And these new kinds of nuclear arms include hypersonic nuclear cruise missiles, nuclear-powered ballistic missiles, nuclear torpedoes shot from drone submarines. Undersecretary Thompson, I'm glad that you acknowledged in your prepared testimony that the U.S. has to reckon with, and I quote, I think this is right out of your statement, whether or not Russia's recently announced strategic nuclear weapons will be held accountable under, end quote, the New START treaty. So let me ask, just to clarify, is it the position of the United States that we consider the weapons that were previewed in the speech that are under development and he announced in March, the hypersonic nuclear cruise missiles, the nuclear-powered ballistic missiles, the 100 megaton nuclear torpedoes shot from drone submarines and the like, do we consider those to be strategic nuclear weapons covered under the START treaty?
Senator, I would defer to my technical experts for the firm answer on that. My initial read is they would count as strategic weapons.
Well, can I ask, have the Russians notified any of these new kinds of strategic nuclear arms featured in that speech to the bilateral consultative commission?
They've not been raised through the formal process, no, sir.
Have we asked them to do so?
Not to my knowledge, but I can check again on what occurred. And it wasn't, as I read the results from the INF technical experts meeting, that wasn't raised, or we haven't had discussions on specifics of New START.
So as far as you know, no one yet has raised with the Russians from our side. We saw your speech. We saw what you're talking about developing. We believe that needs to be noticed and notified.
Those were not notified. The only way we've seen those is in the open press that you addressed.
No, I know they haven't been notified. Has anyone from our government asked them, expressed to them our belief that it is their obligation to notify it based on what we saw them describe?
I have not done so, Senator.
Why not?
We have not had the engagement on New START with my counterpart, but I will take that back. And
your counterpart on the Russian side?
Correct.
But beyond that, there are other ways beyond that. You're saying there's been no engagement at all whatsoever? There aren't other channels by which this could be raised, even through a public statement of some sort?
We've had engagement, Senator, but because it was in an unofficial press report and not through official channels, we still have some intelligence to gather on that to confirm, deny, as we've seen before.
What was a Putin speech? That's pretty official.
Senator, as we have seen before from the rhetoric from President Putin, what he says isn't necessarily ground truth.
Yeah, I'm not saying that whether or not some of this was built on hyperbole or not. My point is, if he gave a speech, he described these weapons, you would think that someone in the United States government would say to them, hey, we saw the speech by your Putin guy, and if that's true, you need to notify that. That would violate START.
Senator, we're taking action on it. We haven't done it through the formal New START process with our counterparts.
Okay. Well, it doesn't sound like any action's been taken yet in regards to that.
We've taken action, Senator, within our own community, not through the formal process.
You mean you've talked to each other about it?
Senator, as a former intelligence officer of 28 years, we have a practice of information isn't necessarily intelligence until it's confirmed. So we're working with our agencies and partners and allies to confirm if that information
I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that we should tell them, hey, we know you have something. Okay. All I'm saying is he gave a speech. He described a series of weapons who, if they were developed at any point in the future, would fall under the START treaty as a strategic weapon. And you would think someone would say, hey, we saw your speech. We're not saying we think it's real or not real, but if that is real, you understand that needs to be notified. And you're saying we haven't yet done that.
I'm saying that we've looked at it internally. I haven't met with my counterpart on that discussions, but I'll take that back for consideration.
All right. Let me ask about INF real quick. The treaty puts limits on us in other theaters outside of Europe. And with other competitors in particular, especially China, that are not covered by it. So I don't know who this question is appropriately to, but does the INF treaty as currently structured begin to put us at a strategic disadvantage with respect to China, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region?
Senator, you raise a good point, and I think that is indeed one of the questions that we are looking at in terms of the overall implications of remaining in compliance with a treaty in which the Russians are in clear violation of.
I guess my last question is, and as far as violating the INF treaty should not be surprising. It is our official position that they are in violation of the INF treaty. That's correct. Okay. And it should not be surprising, is it not been widely reported now that the Russians have openly both displayed in exercises and through statements made by military officials a doctrine of escalate to de-escalate, including the use in their doctrine of tactical nuclear weapons in the battlefield, in essence, in order to elevate or in order to exacerbate a crisis, in order to escalate it, in order to then de-escalate it. A nuclear strike in the battlefield, everybody would stop, and it would allow them. So the violation of the INF Treaty and the use of intermediate weapons would be fully consistent with that new doctrine, would it not?
I would believe it would be, Senator, absolutely correct, and that's why I believe it's important that we consider why the Russians are violating the INF Treaty in the way they are, because they must see some advantage to doing it, either militarily, politically, or otherwise.